Okay. I'm trying to sound back on my computer, make sure that Bruce can both hear us and we can hear him.
Can you all hear me okay?
Oh, we can. All right, good. You were just being so quiet. I wanted to make sure.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Morning.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's feedback.
It is, when you go live on YouTube, it does this like weird feedback cycle every time. That's why I'm always like, everybody hold on one second. It's about to get really weird for a minute. And then, but so we are recording this meeting now and we are broadcast, so. We're ready for action.
I call the meeting to order. We have quorum, so we can get started. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Okay, we approve the agenda.
A second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Minutes in front of us, like, we lost without them. Okay. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting? Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank
Aye.
you. Get started.
All right. So let me click through. The first thing we want to do is talk about the visits that we just made and introduce you to Miss McCaskill, who is our new assistant principal this school year that we've told a lot of you guys about. And she maybe shared some of this information while you guys were walking around already, but she's going to share a little bit more with you about the pre-K program that we've started. And you can like give me a signal so I can click through the slides for you. And talk nice and loud for us.
So,
There you go.
so the idea for our program is that we are like educating the whole child, and we hear that a lot, but we really wanted to like actually put it into practice and make sure we're hitting all of the different objectives for students and development and stuff like kindergarten. So for our program, we do have multi-age classrooms, which is different for this school year, which is different than the past program that we've had. So I always give the example of like at Perry Street, I have coworkers who are in their 20s, just graduated from college, but then I also have coworkers who are in their 60s and 70s, and like we all contribute to our learning community and we all have something to contribute. You can go to the next slide. I'll just go through it that way. So we all have something to contribute. So I really like the idea of multi-age, having the 3s and the 4s. So it's just pre-kindergarten, and they get to stay with the same teachers for 2 years. So it gives them that family aspect, and the teachers get to see their full development from when they come as 3-year-olds all the way until they leave as 5-year-olds. Another part of it was our outdoor education. I think with COVID, there's been like a really big push for, nice outdoor spaces where students can fully learn. So I was outside one day and I was like, oh, this is a really big empty space. So I asked if we could do like an outdoor classroom for pre-K, and so we could just have our own space, and it'll truly be like an outdoor classroom. So we'll have like art easels, sandbox, sensory, there'll be dramatic play, like a little farmers market, a trike path, a new place climber, and things like that. So everything, all the things that are like in the classroom will also be available outside, plus the things for like gross motor. And that's just like a bigger picture of it.
We saw it live and in action. It feels even more exciting now.
Another part of it was enrichment. So I know for like K through 8, the students get to, leave and go to art, they get to go to PE and technology. So I wanted a version for that for pre-K. so that they can also get ready. Part of being ready for kindergarten is getting ready for those extracurricular activities. So this was just the way to do it that was developmentally appropriate. So in that one class, they get to do PE, music, art, cooking, and those fun activities that kind of extend their learning beyond the classroom.
All right, it's very slow.
For our curriculums, we're using creative curriculum. We chose this one because I think it matches well with like K-8, they use CKLA, which is very big on building vocabulary and building background knowledge. So children have access to other kind of content areas, and creative curriculum does something very similar. So they use a studies approach. So, and the studies relate to like their real life, real world. So right now we're doing a building study and we're building a playground. So it kind of all relates and is based on the student's interests and works on vocabulary and incorporates all the other subjects, math, literacy. And then we also do second step, which correlates with K-8. So now it's pre-K through 8th grade, all does second step. And that focuses on their social emotional health, getting them skills that are ready for learning. For our assessments, we're going to do gold. And for gold, it matches with creative curriculum, and it just goes through different objectives, 38 of them, that focus on their fine motor, gross motor, literacy, mathematics, and teachers will implement and put in like pictures and videos and notes from like their small groups from throughout the day. And we'll just rate them on like a level, and they'll be able to see progression throughout the 2 years. And then we'll also still do class, just like all DCPS preschool programs, we have class. So our PD professional development over the last few Wednesdays have focused on class, getting them ready and informed about what the observers are going to be looking for. So here we're working on instructional support, which we know is one of the hardest domains.
And like they spend all year preparing for it, but then for one day, for like 2 hours, observers come into our school and watch the classrooms. So getting it as ingrained as possible is great, but it's such a one of those hard tools that like you have this tiny window of time to show evidence that you are doing everything that you do all the time.
And we wanted to start it early just so that it's not like, oh, they're here, so like let's do something really fancy. We just want it to be part of like their everyday. Like we should be doing things that are best practice every single day, regardless if someone is watching. So that way when they come, it's kind of handy. And then this is just our lovely staff. You saw some of them today. We have a good bunch. A few of them are coming from kindergarten down to pre-K, so they know where a lot of the students are going. And then we have a few who have been in pre-K for 15 plus years. There's like 2 or 3 of them who have been in pre-K for 2 plus years. So we have a good bunch. A good multi-age staff. A good multi-age staff.
The mic is on my computer, which is why I was weirdly standing right next to you. I wanted to make sure that online they could hear you.
How are you getting parents involved? This is really good. Very much part of the learning home. How are you going to get them?
So we are working so inform them throughout the day. Because we have just started our first unit, so we have like 3 opportunities for them to come in and volunteer. So we're doing like our building study. So we have some parents coming in on a building day. We have some community partners coming in on like I think we're going to go to 6 days. So letting them come in and like experience how their students. Because, a lot of our kids they learn to play. Sometimes there's like a misconception, but play is the way that they learn. So we want to invite parents to let them see that. And in the future, hopefully, like especially when those 3-year-olds get a little bit more mature, we go outside the building and do like field trips. And we want to invite the parents. And we're also planning to
Any other questions? All right. We have lots more to talk about, so I want to keep us rolling. We're gonna let Ms. McCaskill go back to pre-K though. Thank you, Ms. McCaskill. Rachel, do you want to go through our highlights?
Sure. Oh, I'm sorry, question.
Can you guys online hear us? I see a nod. Okay, I'm gonna say yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah, I can hear you
absolutely.
fine.
Yes.
It was a
Can
little
hear
bit quiet when speaking at the table, I had to for Ms. McCaskill, but just I can hear it.
Great.
So some of the fall highlights, increased student engagement and culture. So last year, this time was a completely different school than this year, this time. Because last year was so difficult because of COVID and just a bunch of moving pieces and teachers taking off and students being absent, everyone having COVID, we experienced some struggle last year. But this year we started off strong. We started off like it's a regular school year because we are treating it like it's a regular school year, and we've seen the results of that. Kids in seats, silent hallways, students doing what they're supposed to do, adults being where they're supposed to be. And we have seen a decrease in adults taking off. So that is a huge plus because kids can't learn if the adults aren't here. And so we are incentivizing adults being here so they get paid out for their PTO. We have all of these prizes in place for adults who come every single day. They get stars. We have a star program where teachers are able to earn stars to collect gifts at the end of the month. So we're trying to put all these different things in place to make sure that teachers are here and that kids are learning. We have a robust high impact tutoring program, which you all saw a bit of a few minutes ago when we were down there in the K to Apple Tree. Ooh, early childhood hallway. Cindy, don't look at me like that.
It still slips out of our mouths a lot. It's funny. And it does parents. Parents come in and are like, my kid's in Apple Tree. And we're like, no, they're in PSP's pre-K program.
Another thing is the weekly social emotional learning for every student. We are spending a lot of time putting energy and effort into the students' well-being, their mental health, and how they participate with the community at Perry Street. And so we are trying to make sure that we have a strong, super strong adult culture, which then translates into a super strong kid culture. So that is one of our number one goals this year, is to keep parents happy and keep teachers happy, to make sure that our kids are learning and they're being taken care of. That is pretty much it for the highlights.
We are in the midst, though, of a regular sequence of events too. So next year is actually our 25-year charter review, and that will be more of a topic of conversation in the future, but we kind of wanted to put a pin in what's going on right now so that people know where we are at within that cycle. I feels like we kind of lost 2 years in being aware of like a normal cycle of schools and reviews. Right now, we have our quality site review going on with the public charter school board. So in advance of every 5 year, you have your quality site review the year before. So yesterday we had an observer here in the building walking around, and they will be for the next 2 weeks. So they don't tell us where they're going, what they're doing, but they come throughout the school day and they'll do scripted feedback for us, and we'll all get a draft of that in, I think it takes them longer than we expect, but we'll get that pretty soon. And then they'll turn it into a report that informs our charter review.
Have they indicated at all how they're incorporating the fallbacks that came with COVID into these charter reviews?
Yes. And I mean, that's kind of what's up here, which is that the accountability metrics were not calculated, right? So the goals that we had to meet, there is no calculation for, there is no score to hold us accountable to. I'd say overarching understanding, and you could get into the more weeds of it with Alexandra here too, is basically like, they're going to use the data that was collected only if it helps a school. Right. So schools are not going to be under review or closed based on the data that occurred over even this year to the last 2 years, because we are still in transitional goals is what they're calling them. And then next year will be the first year. So we'll already be in review before they implement a full PMF again, or whatever they call it, I guess. They could call it something different, couldn't they?
Yep. Yeah, so the genesis of it is last year, so the year 21-22 is what they're calling just baseline. And then this year you have to show improvement over last year, but there's no definition of improvement. I think the big takeaway is at this point, there's no indication that there's any concern about the charter.
Maybe we
were very much on an upward trajectory, and there is no indication that anyone should be worried or concerned. So like if there's a big highlight, that's, I would say, the big takeaway.
And that's what we'll get to share next year, is the highlights that happened, and we're going to see a dip, but what we're also going to see again this year, because we're speaking into being, is a huge growth again, and we know how to do that. We have so many partners and programs and tutoring and regular learning happening, that there's no way that we won't see, again, huge gains that we get to share. Okay, let's keep trucking here. We are going to get through some of our baseline last year data and incoming data, because I know people are curious about that. But first, we'll go through some operations and finance. So we had sent out information and let you guys know we were at about 70% of full enrollment the week before school started. We, on October 5th, is what they call count day, ended up at 93%. So we did not hit our enrollment target. And we have done all the hustling we can do, but we also are going to keep enrolling. So I'll say that, like, it doesn't end on October 5th. We actually just welcomed another large family in the week after, which is hard because it doesn't impact our funding, but it is what we want to do to make our school the robust size that it can be and make sure all our classes are supported appropriately. We are the most under enrolled in our pre-K 4 and pre-K 3 program holistically. It's not out of the norm for where our pre-K program has been previously. So we don't really see it as an impact of our program changing. It's very consistent with what it's been before. I think we've got some questions just about like market saturation. Are there actually more kids in this area? Now we also know, like, as we become a more well-known program and we have results to show for it and a beautiful playground to show everybody, that will help us drive more enrollment in future years. But that's where we ended up this year. The other place where we saw lower enrollment and returning enrollment is in our 8th grade class did not meet their enrollment target. So that was, we've got a few here that we would have liked to fill a few more seats on. It does mean that we've made a few staffing shifts. And we started doing that in August, right? Just to account for the size, because some cohorts are bigger. What you can see is that our 6th and 7th graders are at 120% of our enrollment target. So we wanted to make sure that our resources are in the right places. We started the year with 3 8th grade cohorts for only 32 students. That doesn't make sense. So we're right now in the process of making those adjustments to get our staff where we need them to be serving the most number of students. On the right side, you can see our class sizes are all still really nice sizes. They have got a great ratio of adult to children. The highest ones you see there in kindergarten and 1st grade also have an instructional aide with them. But those are just a really healthy, nice class size that our goal will be at every cohort to be around 20 kids. And we saw, some of them grow. We also, a change that we'll talk about in a little bit is our population change. We have had a 13.5% increase in students who are qualified as at risk, which is a qualifier that our state makes. It's not something we determine, but it means students who are receiving state benefits or in the foster care system or have identified as homeless. So we've seen a really large increase in that population. And luckily, at the same time, we met an incredible candidate this summer. So we have already, prior to knowing that, added a social worker to our team. So we have a lot of good resources. We have 4 full-time clinicians on site who work with families all over. So our change in location has not changed that much. We're still about 50% Ward 5 and like within a mile of the school, and then 50% is Ward 7 and 8. So we see about half of our families traveling and half of our families are pretty close, which has been really consistent year after year after year. We've also seen an increase again in our special education population. We kind of anticipated that happening because there was not much evaluation and referral happening during virtual schooling, right? So what we knew is we were going to see a big influx last year of evaluations happening and then diagnoses of students. So we've also gotten a lot more students, but these changes in populations help us with the financial side of slightly lower enrollment, because what they do is bolster our funding source and our ability to serve those students. They come with a lot more dollars from the state to make sure that we can serve all the needs that they have. Sorry. Does anybody have questions specifically on enrollment, the change? You can see year after year, we had our last big growth in 1920 and now we've been pretty stable. But our goal is to keep really filling up these last cohorts to get to about 20 kids. All right, guys. The changes that the student population have made, we want to highlight for people because it is different than like our original plan and our budget. So we're going to through the year see some forecasted variances. We have increased our special education teachers. We have increased our social workers and counselors. And the other big change is that we increased what is called self-contained classrooms. So we previously had 2 classrooms that serve students who are what's categorized as level 4, which just means they have over 24 hours of special education services that they get from our school every week, which is really high. And it means that they are in classrooms just for other students who are receiving that level of special education services. So we just, since school started, have gone from 2 to 3 classrooms because we had a couple new students who had that same level of need, and it is what drew those parents to our school. So it is a program we're really proud of, and it's not something a lot of schools offer, and we're seeing, a lot of success there still. The other adjustments we have in terms of we shifted one of our kindergarten class teachers into a different role because we didn't need another kindergarten. We've also added PE this year because we knew that is what our kids needed last year, was to move around a lot more, especially when we saw a lot of behavioral challenges and just physicality, kids need to move. So that's one of the things that we did to respond this year. We've got high impact tutoring happening, which is bringing a huge number of additional adults into our building and a huge increase in, small individualized tutoring. And then we also have a full-time partner through One Common Unity who is here helping us again with some of those behavioral challenges that we saw. So they're working full-time with our Dean of Students to run student mediations, community circles, and their program is called Intention, Not Detention, with the goal that kids who act out are communicating, right? So how can we receive that communication and make sure that we are giving them what they need to be successful? Feel free to interrupt me, guys, but I'm going to keep trucking because I know that we got a lot of information to get through. Moving from operations and finance into just compliance and procurement, we do not have any new contracts to review. We do not have any renewals, and we do not have anything upcoming as of right now. This is where we should be right now, right? We've approved our contracts that come into this school year. And as we start looking at next school year, which we'll start really doing in December and January, then we'll really be looking at those big ticket purchases again. Our facilities investments are on track, which is really exciting. We have 60% of the bathrooms done, so we're a little ahead, right? Our goal was to get 50% done in this fiscal year and 50% in next fiscal year. The next scope of the project, which is the second half of the multi-stall bathrooms, will happen next summer. So technically this summer is, and by next, I mean this coming summer. That's next fiscal year though. So we've got 6 bathrooms that got completed and 3 staff bathrooms that got completed. We have billed exactly about half of the project so far. In terms of finance, our finance committee actually had a great meeting yesterday. So thank you who joined us. This is a harder year because of some variances that we did not anticipate happening, but we are still, most importantly, in a positive net income, and we have a strong cash position. So that's the highlight everyone needs to know, even though what we see is enrollment, which is the number of students in this building, is going to be the largest impact on our budget always. So if we have not met the goal that we had, we're going to see a large financial impact from that. With that said, the second bullet there is right. We saw this huge increase in these other populations, which offsets some of that loss of revenue from individual children. The other big change that our finance committee is aware of, but we talked when we passed the budget about one of the risks in the budget we passed being that we were hoping that OSSI released again our 21st Century Community Learning Center grant. What we came to find out in September, which was very late in the process, is that they had decided they're not releasing that competition. So we were already in full program, right? Because the last grant we had ended September 30th. So we are currently serving 250 kids every day in before and after care who are getting free services. And we are going to have to make a shift because this grant has not been released. And I have met with OSSI 4 times about it, I think already. They are trying to help us connect with other out of school time grants that might be able to allow us to continue operations for at least parts of the program. And then we're looking for fully funded community partners to come in, because our biggest fear about this sort of financial impact is just that it doesn't impact our families, or in this case, it impacts them as least as possible. We've got families in here who are you'll hear information ahead. And I so appreciate getting to have that perspective, right? And so many of us can, as parents, have crises and then step back and be but I also know with perspective and as a professional, this is right? These programs get funded. Nothing is actually free. It gets funded from somewhere. So we are going to talk a little bit more about that as the meeting goes on and how that impacts what's about to happen programmatically at the school. But we've got a good plan in place to make sure that people get the support they need. So no, OSSI has decided that they are going to restructure all of the 21st Community Learning Center and the out of school time grants. They decided this, we think actually at some point in the spring, and just didn't share it with any of the grantees. I think I just met with Nikki Stewart, who's pretty much like, you know, one of the highest up people in grant management for OSSI on Wednesday of last week, and shared with her that since March, I had 8 emails that went unanswered inquiring about this grant because it was weird. We weren't hearing anything. They weren't releasing the application, and it was out of the norm for the way that they operate. And so, you know, we all kind of kept being like, well, this is a risk, but it had been I think they hadn't taken a year off in 8 years. And in that 1 year and 8 years, the DC Council actually bridged the grant. And prior to that, it had been a continuous grant for over 20 years in DC. So this is completely out of the norm. They are giving us all of the like hope and information that likely, you know, they will be releasing it again next year. So we've just got this 1 year, which we can apply, and there are no funds available to us to apply for this out of school time programming.
I just will say it's not only Pear Street, it's anybody who's getting grant funded this year
Yeah.
lost the funding. So this is not just a Pear Street. There are other, everybody's.
Yeah. So there were 8 grantees who are in our cohort who were all not notified and are all just as upset or more upset than us. We at least have a whole school we have funding for. A lot of these nonprofits, like that was the majority and soul of their funding. So this is a huge impact on a lot of communities. And that's the point we keep trying to make. I do when I talk to OSSIs, I'm like, please don't apologize to me. This is a family and our staff. So that's the other piece, right? We have a large staff who participates and is hired by this. We have 17 members who are earning a part-time salary in this program right now that this will shift. So I want to keep going because we're going to talk a little bit more about it when we meet later. But let's go. Academics are the most important and most interesting piece here.
All right,
Rachel,
guys.
go for it.
So before we get into the slides, I really want to just go back down memory lane real quick. And you weren't here 5 years ago, so I just want to give you a brief overview. It's going to take 10 seconds, I promise. So when we first got here, when we
Sorry.
first arrived, Perry Street was a tier 3 school. We were at the bottom of the list. So that was 15, 16, and then 16, 17, we made about 9-point-something% gains, and we were able to come out of tier 3 into tier 2 at the bottom of tier 2. And then we were able to move up in tier 2 to the point where we got to tier 1. In 18, 19, we became tier 1. I only bring that up because I'm about to talk about PARCC scores and what the impact it's had on Perry Street as it relates to COVID. And so that is important because when COVID hit, we were tier 1, and then COVID happened, and then like all these things started happening terrible to schools around America, right? And so we have we see the impact of that. So saying all that to say, so citywide, so overall the city dropped as it relates to PARCC. In ELA, the city dropped 8 percentage points in ELA, and then Perry Street dropped 11 percentage points. And then in math, overall, it was a 10% drop in math. And then if you look, you'll see that Perry Street dropped 7 percentage points in math. And so I bring that up to say, overall, the drop in math was consistent across the board where it fluctuated in ELA. I only bring that up to say ELA and math achievement levels declined akin to school year 16 and 17. So we started in 15, 16, school year 16, 17 was year 2 for school turnaround. And what we're experiencing, which seems in line, 16, 17 years. So imagine year 1 last year was year 1 of turnaround, which it was because it was the year we all came back after COVID. We're in year 2 of turnaround right now. So our results and our PARCC data looks like where we were when we were here in 16, 17. The good news, though, is we are very skilled and trained in moving students, individual students, and student growth. that is where we received like all the accolades, all the awards in 17, 18, 19. It was around student growth, special populations, and being able to move students super fast. Tim, never mind, I won't get into the. All right, so with that being said, sorry, I can't read this. Okay. More students scored at the 3+ level spring of 2021 than their individual prior score in spring of 2019. So what that means is if I got a 3 or a 3 in PARCC in 2019, I actually grew in 2022. More students grew in ELA in 2022 as it relates to PARCC. Okay, and then in math, the students saw a decline as compared to their prior PARCC level in the spring of 2019. So we didn't hit the mark in math, right? So we saw a decline in math, which we are working on, guys. So our 6th and 7th grade cohorts are where we're going to get the most bang for our buck. We have teachers in place in 6th and 7th grade. We also have a math specialist in place who's pulling small groups of kids every single day in those 6th and 7th grades to make sure that we are able to see the gains we want to see in those 6th and 7th grade. Yes.
Already. We're first time that she prep, and my daughter's always been in like every year from grade. It's always been below expectations. So since she's been here, she's gone from below expectations to now she's in advanced math. And like when I found out, I was in tears because she had been like so behind it. Even like with Jetty, like his behavior is like you can tell when he's home, he's listening. So somebody somewhere is doing something right. I just wanted to share that.
And like
Thank you.
your perspective couldn't be more valuable to us, right? Which is
absolutely.
someone who's coming in with a fresh perspective and like sees their children being successful.
I've seen it immediately.
Perfect. That
Thank
makes
you.
us so happy.
I have
to hear.
goosebumps.
I know, right? Which it brings me to my point about accelerated classes. So in the middle school, we have accelerated ELA and accelerated math classes. In our accelerated math class, 8th grade last year, they took Algebra 1 last year. Every single student in that Algebra 1 class either scored a 3 or a 4 on PARCC. One student scored a 5. We call her the calculator. But it goes to show how important those accelerated classes are, and our students are benefiting from them. And another thing you'll see is that in the 8th grade math, not a lot of students scored 4s on 8th grade math because they were all in Algebra 1. And then in Algebra 1, they excel so much so that we want to make sure that this school year, we're still doing accelerated classes. We still have accelerated math classes for students. We're still pulling our students left and right out of those 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, well, not 8th grade, 6th and 7th grade classes to make sure that we are meeting our growth, our map growth. They all take map at the beginning of the school year. So we have baseline data. We'll take map again after Thanksgiving, and that is where we'll truly see if what we are doing is working, if students are growing, and if students are learning what we want them to learn. So that's where we are looking towards, is that winter map to make sure that students are where they're supposed to be. As long as every single student meets their growth goal, we are happy. Now, if students exceed that goal and go crazy, we are extremely happy. But the goal is that every student meets their growth goal. And every growth goal is different based off the student and where the student is academically.
I think we've gone over everything on this one. So
Yep.
we'll keep, no,
I'm
I mean,
just
like,
rambling, my bad.
no, you're
no,
not.
I'm sure
We
it's
all
time for
do.
some stuff.
We all
sorry.
do.
Okay.
And I mean, these is all the same themes that we're talking about, right? All the different ways we know that our kids have to grow, but have to also grow like double time. They don't get the luxury of growing single time at this point. Our governance committee would like everyone to complete this survey. So when we send out the materials, we're going to send it out to you. It's an assessment of who and what expertise we have on the board, so that as we are looking over the next couple of years at like when we need to onboard, that we're filling any gaps we have in expertise on the board. Additionally, we will have some closed session activity for the governance committee as we talk about a new member. But this is our current board roster, and we do still need an academic chair. So, you know, if you've just been feeling that calling or yearning since our last board meeting, you still should reach out to Vanette. And it is a time to dig in deeper to the the data, right? And exactly what's happening across the board. So we have got our other committees, each our governance and our academics committee are full. So we will have some transition once a chair takes over, because remember, we can only have 5 members on any of those committees. Okay. So the next action is something that needs to be voted on. And we have some closed session work that we'd like under the appointment, employment, and assignment promotion. This is a long explanation.
So we will need to ask a board vote, and then anybody who is not a board member invited to the closed session to leave for the closed session.
Do I have a motion to move into the closed section? So,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we have two non-full board members yet guests who are going to exit for our closed session.
But I would like Mr. Mudd to actually talk a little bit about.
Yeah,
this.
that'd be great.
Okay, well, yeah.
So we have a candidate for our new parent board member in Chandra Sterling.
You can wave at the camera too. That one up there is gosh.
And she's already told a little bit about herself.
Yeah.
About her daughter. I'd like for you to tell us who you are and how you came to her.
So I'm Chandra Sterling, of course, in the Perry Street Prep. We were recruited by Miss Knight. And then I met Ms. Castle at her baby shower. So, I've kind of been teaching the kids. I am a project manager for the government. I've been here about 2 years now. I'm really big on like education and community. Like we're always doing volunteer work, just around. We moved in the city several different places, but that's kind of me in a nutshell. That's why I'm here. I want to make a difference, and not just my kids, but like everyone in my house. 8 million kids at my house all the time. But, I am really big for like support throughout like COVID and everything. I make sure my daughter gets tutoring and like good. I kind of want to see how I can help, everyone else. Like I can think all the homeless kids. But
Thank you.
not too far.
She has a son in pre-K3 who we
Yeah.
saw when we went upstairs, and her daughter.
I'm gonna check on Jet when we leave here.
Yeah.
He was not happy.
That is very hard to see your parent and then have them leave.
Thank you for joining us for the party. I will follow up with you with the results.
Okay.
But we enjoyed your.
Thank you so much.
And we had another guest from the public who is here. And you could introduce yourself on your way out if you'd like to. And we will always have the rest of our meeting posted online.
Thank you. Well, lovely to see you all, beautiful faces on a Tuesday morning. My name is Lara. I'm currently a program coordinator with Grassroots Health, formerly Grassroots Project. I was raised in Virginia. My family's from Puerto Rico. I was on the GW Women's rowing team where I got started with this organization. Our mission is to advance health equity by using sports to provide health education and mobilizing college athletes to serve as near-peer educators for youth. So in the simplest way, we bring in college athletes to talk about health through sports and like PE health classes. So we have a 3-year pipeline. In 6th grade, it's nutrition, 7th grade, sexual health, 8th grade, mental health, and over 9 sessions each year, 27 sessions overall. We reach 63% of the OSCE standards and the Department of Education standards. So we have a huge emphasis on meeting education standards in terms of physical health and also health education. So we have been very fortunate to work in Perry Street for multiple years. I brought some little forms that I can leave around. We are planning our family and caregiver sessions with Perry Street here. We have run these at multiple schools. We currently work in 15 schools, reaching about 1,500 students every year. I meet with all the 8th grade, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade classes, all of those schools. Today we actually see 2 classes working with both teachers. Shout out for the second one, getting students in movement. And we are so happy to be in Perry Street. We've had family and caregiver workshops at all other schools. It's a 2-part workshop. In the first session, we share the facts and dispel the myths about health. And then we also learn about why we're here, why we're talking to students about sexual health, why it's important to start these conversations in middle school before students find out their sexual debut. And then in the second session, we share some tips and tricks, not like to say the try to do's and try not to do's when discussing health with your students. Everyone is welcome, no matter what grade your students are in. We provide healthcare, your transportation is reimbursed. Everyone gets a gift card for attending. We got dinner. It's a super great time. It's one of the best parts of Grassroots. So I have some forms I can leave here. We haven't solidified the date.
He hasn't said, we'll make sure we share with you guys when we do have one on the calendar, but I think this is actually the 6th year that Grassroots has been working with us in a variety of ages and different times, but it's been a really consistently great program for our kiddos.
Some parents recommend it. We also host sessions in Spanish, depending on the needs of the school, fluent Spanish speakers, so we'll host those. And it's a great time. Yeah, so my bad, it wasn't printing double-sided. But yeah, I love Grassroots. If you ever see Division I college athletes in the building, they're with us. It's super special to have you for educators, just people that students might look up to, and they're like, oh, wow, like this powered football player can come and talk to me about coping mechanisms and stress and why it's important to keep in mind consent and balanced meals and the impact media might have on food, for like body image items we choose at the corner store and all that type of stuff. So we just changed our name with Grassroots Health. Feel free to look us up online. I work with Coach Oliver and Coach T.
Thank you.
Super to have you. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let me turn on our live broadcast. We will.